I know. I know. Hey everyone, it's Sevy and welcome back to the channel. In this video, I'm going to be talking about Aino. Now the footage here is from the CE server, so things might be still subject to change. However, I am releasing this video about the time that official servers are going up, or at least are about to go up. So whatever is different in the official release, you'll probably find pretty soon, but I don't think there's going to be anything major changing anyway. So, Aino is going to be our free 4-star entering Krai, and she's also going to be rated up on Flynn's banner in Phase 2. Let's talk about her kit. Aino is our first Hydro Claymore user, and she's tiny. It's kind of funny that our first Hydro Claymore user is like of the size that can barely lift the Claymore. And here's a little preview of her animations. Her normal attack string has 3 hits. When you hold her normal attack into a charged attack, sadly she doesn't turn into a deer. Instead, she spins, which is normal of Claymore users. When you use her skill, she dashes forward, but you can also aim with her skill to better determine like her trajectory. It's kind of like Alhaitham's skill. Then when you use her burst, she gets this little metal ducky thing that shoots hydro projectiles, and we're going to talk about that more in a second. So how does Aino work? Well, the core of Aino's kit is really her burst. Her burst is the most important thing about her because it spawns Ducky and that fires hydro damage. When you have 0 or 1 Krai characters on the team, the Ducky's AoE range is smaller. Its hydro hits are also kind of single target, but they do have a little splash damage, so if enemies are clumped very tightly together, then it can hit all of them, but not reliably. Now, with 2 or more Krai characters on the team, which is an Ascendant moon sign, Ducky has a larger range, it attacks faster, and each hydro hit has a wider AoE. It's still not super big, but it can hit grouped enemies more reliably. So Aino here, her role is basically to be a hydro applicator, and she's very functional even from off field. Not every hit applies hydro, but even then, she's fairly good as a hydro applicator even at C0. And I think that's important because if we think about reliable 4-star hydro applicators at C0, that basically leaves Xingqiu. Candace does have some hydro hits from her burst, but she has to be C6 to regularly, reliably get a hydro application from her burst. There's also Barbara. When she uses her skill, she gets like a hydro ring around her, but then you have to hug the enemy to get more of that hydro application going. So I know having a burst that has a fairly decent AoE and can apply hydro like every few seconds, I think that's pretty good. And it also has a decent duration. Her burst lasts for 14 seconds with a 13.5 second cooldown and only needs 50 energy to activate. She doesn't really have a lot of energy problems. That being said, you want to make sure that Aino does have enough energy, and that can vary from team to team, from a combat scenario to combat scenario, but she at least has 4-star claymores that give her like good options in getting her energy back easily. So she has the Favonius, which of course is a huge chunk of ER and also gives clear particles, or she has the 5.8 event weapon, and if you proc certain reactions that she can easily proc, then that actually gives her some flat energy, which makes her burst easy to recharge also. So that being said, I think her burst is quite beneficial and actually doesn't take too much trouble to get up, which is great. And then her skill, it does have her dash forward, it has 2 hydro hits, but its main function is really to generate energy particles for her to get her burst back up. And then her normal attacks really aren't that important. Now, if we look at the scaling of her attacks, based on her talents, they do scale on her attack stat, but honestly, like, her personal damage is kind of, it's not much. If you're really more after her hydro application, then I feel like you don't really have to invest a lot of resources into her talent levels anyway. And to add to that, her passive and Constellations, or at least one of her Constellations, gives her additional damage that scales from her EM stat. That being said, you can actually just think more about her EM stat, because not only is that going to give her extra personal damage, but it's also going to give her extra reaction damage. Speaking of our Constellations, we're going to quickly go through those as well. Especially for us Flynn's pullers, I do hope to get a few copies of Aino when I pull on his banner. C1 on Aino adds extra EM to her when she uses her skill or burst, and it also gives EM to party members, which again is useful for reaction teams, which we anticipate to use her in. C2 gives her burst extra hydro hits, and that just further improves her hydro application. And those hydro hits, they scale from both her attack and her EM stats. Her C3 increases her burst level by 3. C4 is an energy constellation that just makes her burst even easier to recharge. And then her C5 increases her skill level by 3. Then her C6 increases Electro Charged, Bloom, Lunar Charged, and Lunar Bloom reaction damage from the team, even more so when there's 2 or more Krai characters on the team. Of course, we can see that those constellations, they're just made to enhance her even more as a reaction team support and as a hydro applicator. And honestly, they're all pretty straightforward. Like, I think these are pretty good constellations, like nothing really game-changing or nothing really out of the ordinary. So taking into account her kit and her constellation, her team role is basically using her as a decent budget hydro applicator for those hydro reaction teams, which would be Electro Charged, Bloom, Lunar Charged, Lunar Bloom, and so on. And I even tried her in some Vaporize teams, as you'll see in a little bit. Now, the important thing to me is that she is able to accomplish this even at C0. In addition to that, it's kind of clear that they're positioning her to be like a free Flynn's teammate for Lunar Charged teams. But I am also anticipating that Aino will have a spot in future Lunar Bloom teams. If you want to learn more about Llama and Lunar Bloom, you can look at my Llama video. The TLDR of it is that Lunar Bloom teams aren't really fully realized yet with just Llama and Aino's release. But if there is a future Lunar Bloom character that comes out, then I'm anticipating Aino is going to be like your budget option for that team as well. And then you can also just use Aino as a holder for support artifact sets like Silken Moon Serenade, which is the new Krai set that shares EM to the entire party. There's also Deepwood Memories if you want to use her in a Bloom team, just sets like that. Those are like her base functions in a team. So I did try her in a few teams, and first I tried her in some Vaporize teams. Now in this first team with Mawika, Yelan, and Shilonen, I basically tried C0 Aino where I would usually put Xingqiu. Just to be clear, this is Aino at C0, and I played them through Stygian 4. I just needed to see in concept if Mawika would be able to vape consistently, if Aino and Yelan could complement each other well in terms of energy and so on. And to be fair, the team performed fairly well. C0 Aino does not have the personal damage that C6 Xingqiu has, which I think is a given, but the team in terms of reactions performed fairly well. I also tried a Vaporize team where C0 Aino was the only hydro applicator, and I used Mawika as the Pyro DPS here. Now, if you set up the hydro application first before going into Mawika, then Aino's burst can uphold the hydro aura well enough for Mawika to consistently vape her hits. You do have to be conscious of that though, because if you don't do this setup well, or if you miss putting the hydro aura before going into Mawika, basically Mawika won't be able to vaporize consistently. And honestly, this kind of applies to Arlecchino as well. Another team that I tried was using a Pyro DPS with C0 Aino and Inefa. And this kind of gives you like a Lunar Charged over vape type team. Like if you've ever tried an over vape team, which does like overload, vaporize, and then also has Electro Charge, it's kind of like that, but we have not quite characters on the team that can proc Lunar Charge. We kind of get that extra effect. Another benefit to this team in concept is that your on-field DPS can use the new Night of the Skies Unveiling set, which gives the user extra crit rate if Lunar Charge or other lunar reactions are procced. If it were a character that couldn't use Obsidian Codex, for example, Arlecchino, like she would benefit from the crit rate of the Night of the Skies Unveiling in this particular team scenario. It was a fun team to play, and it was against this enemy that you kind of need to proc Electro Charged against. I also did try Aino in Bloom teams, both with Llama and without Llama. I also used this footage in the Llama pre-release. There are consequences to using Llama and Aino on the same team, which I explain in the Llama video, but here's how the clips and runs went. And yeah, this is a Nilu team and Stygian 5. I also tried a bunch of these teams at C6, but honestly, the difference wasn't all that big. Like, it didn't really make Stygian 5 more easily clearable for the teams that I already had a hard time clearing Stygian 5 with. A lot of that is because, well, for one, I know C2 doesn't actually add a whole lot of extra hydro application, and then her C6, which buffs lunar reactions. Even if multiple party members are triggering Electro Charged, for example, only the Electro Charged procs triggered by the active character are the ones that are going to be buffed by Aino's C6. And again, I anticipate that this is something that Flynn's is meant to be the main benefactor of. So yeah, like I tried her at C6 and it didn't make that strong of an impression on me, but we'll have to revisit that when Flynn's actually comes out. So that being said, what are my first impressions of Aino? Well, she's functional. I mean, she works at C0. She does her job, which is off-field hydro application, and it's really not a huge struggle getting her burst up, which I think is like one of the most important things. But honestly, I am looking forward to how she synergizes with future Nodcry characters, because right now the synergy is probably going to be more geared for Flynn's, and I'm excited to explore that. Of course, I'm excited to explore Flynn's as a free 4-star. I know it's just given to us so that we don't go into Nodcry empty-handed, basically. And that's going to be all for this quick video on Aino. Let me know in the comments what you think of her, if you're going to be building your C0 Aino free from Nodcry, or if you're hoping to get more copies from her when Flynn's comes around. And don't forget to leave a like on the video, subscribe to my channel for more. If you're seeing this right as it comes out, I'm probably going to be live on Twitch playing Nodcry right as we speak. And I will be streaming live on Twitch as often as I can, the Nodcry everything. But yeah, I will see you there. Take care.